A routine mission goes awry. The interstellar medical ship Nightingale glided silently through the inky void of space, its sleek, white hull gleaming in the starlight. Within its state-of-the-art halls, a diverse crew of human and alien doctors, nurses, and support staff worked tirelessly to prepare for their next mission. Among the crew was Eva Reeves, a young human nurse whose reputation for compassion, quick thinking, and unwavering dedication to her patients had earned her the respect and admiration of her colleagues. She moved through the medical bay with a sense of purpose, her keen blue eyes scanning the readouts on the various pieces of advanced medical equipment as she ensured everything was in perfect working order. "Ava," a friendly voice called out. She turned to see Dr. Zoran Psylocke, a tall, slender Arcturian with bright purple skin and warm, golden eyes. "I heard you were the one who figured out how to recalibrate the nanite infusion system. Brilliant work." Ava smiled, brushing a stray lock of chestnut hair from her face. "Thanks, Doc. Just doing my part to keep us at the top of our game." Dr. Psylocke chuckled, his melodic voice filling the room. "With a crew like this, I have no doubt we'll be ready for whatever the universe throws at us." As if on cue, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all crew," came the steady voice of Captain Zara Solarin, the Nightingale's commanding officer. "Please report to the briefing room immediately. We have an urgent situation." Ava exchanged a curious glance with Dr. Psylocke before hurrying to the briefing room, the hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeps of medical equipment fading behind her. In the briefing room, Captain Solarin stood before a large holographic display, her scaly, green reptilian skin contrasting sharply with the crisp white of her uniform. Her slitted, amber eyes scanned the room as the crew filed in, ensuring everyone was present. "We've received a distress signal from the human colony on Novaria Prime," the captain began, her voice grave. "They're reporting a severe outbreak of an unknown viral pathogen. The local medical facilities are overwhelmed, and they urgently need our assistance." Ava felt a chill run down her spine. Unknown pathogens were always a challenge, and the fact that it had overwhelmed the colony so quickly spoke to its severity. Captain Solarin brought up a holographic display of Novaria Prime. "We'll be entering orbit within the next 6 hours. I want medical teams prepped and ready to deploy as soon as we arrive. Dr. Psylocke, you'll lead the first response team. Ava, you'll be his second in command." Ava nodded, a mix of determination and apprehension coursing through her veins. She knew the risks that came with these missions, but the opportunity to help those in need, to make a real difference, was what had driven her to join the Nightingale's crew in the first place. As the briefing concluded and the crew dispersed to make their preparations, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be unlike any they had faced before. Little did she know just how right she was, or how much the coming days would test her skills, her resolve, and her very understanding of the universe itself. The hours leading up to their arrival at Novaria Prime passed in a blur of activity. Ava worked alongside her fellow nurses and the medical staff to ensure they had all the necessary supplies and equipment. She double and triple checked the stock of antivirals, broad-spectrum antibiotics and immunoboosters, knowing that in a crisis like this, every vial could mean the difference between life and death. As they approached the planet, Ava joined Dr. Psylocke and the rest of the first response team in the shuttle bay. They donned their protective gear, sealed hazmat suits equipped with advanced air filtration systems and built-in biometric monitoring devices. Ava felt a sense of claustrophobia as her suit sealed around her, but she pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the task at hand. The shuttle ride to the surface was tense, the only sound the hum of the engines and the occasional crackle of the comm system. As they entered the atmosphere, Ava caught her first glimpse of Novaria Prime, a once verdant world now shrouded in an eerie, sickly haze. The colony itself was a scene of chaos. The streets were littered with abandoned vehicles and debris, and the few people they saw stumbled about in a daze, their faces masked by a sheen of sweat and twisted in pain. The medical center, when they reached it, was overflowing with patients, the harried staff clearly at their wits' end. As Ava and her team stepped into the fray, the true scale of the crisis hit her. Patients lay on every available surface, many of them barely clinging to life. The air was thick with the stench of sickness and the cries of the suffering. For a moment, Ava felt overwhelmed, the enormity of the task before them threatening to crush her resolve. But then, with a deep breath, she steeled herself. This was what she had trained for, what she had dedicated her life to. With a nod to Dr. Xylox, she set to work, her focus narrowing to the patient before her and the knowledge that, no matter how daunting the odds, she would do everything in her power to help these people. As the first response team worked to stabilize the most critical patients and set up triage, Ava couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something about this outbreak was different. The symptoms were unlike anything she had seen before: a blistering fever, a rapid onset of confusion and insanity, and grotesquely bloated veins, barely visible under a web of discolored skin. Even the most potent antivirals in their arsenal seemed to have little effect, the virus rampaging through the patients' bodies undeterred. With a growing sense of unease, Ava took samples from several patients, determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. She knew the key to saving these people lay in understanding the virus itself, and she would stop at nothing to unravel its secrets. As the Nightingale's crew fought to contain the outbreak and save the colonists, Ava couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of a much larger, much more sinister puzzle. And as she worked, a grim determination took hold of her, a resolve to face whatever challenges lay ahead, no matter the cost. For in that moment, Ava Rees knew that the fate of not just this colony, but potentially the entire human race, rested on the shoulders of her and her crewmates. And she would be damned if she let them down. The mystery deepens. As Ava delved deeper into the mystery surrounding the viral outbreak on Novaria Prime, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this pathogen than met the eye. With each passing hour, the situation grew more dire, the number of infected rising exponentially despite the best efforts of the Nightingale's crew. In the makeshift laboratory she had set up in the colony's medical center, Ava pored over the samples she had collected, her brow furrowed in concentration. The virus was unlike anything she had encountered before. It seemed to mutate and adapt at an astonishing rate, evading even the most advanced diagnostic techniques at her disposal. "What are you hiding?" she muttered to herself, her eyes locked on the holographic display of the virus's genetic structure. It was then that she noticed something peculiar, a sequence of base pairs that seemed out of place, almost artificial in its construction. Ava's heart raced as the implications of her discovery sank in. This virus wasn't natural. It had been engineered. With a renewed sense of urgency, Ava threw herself into her work, determined to unravel the secrets of this bioengineered threat. She cross-referenced the anomalous genetic sequence with every database she could access, searching for any clue that might shed light on its origin. As the hours stretched into days, Ava barely slept, fueled by a potent mix of determination and fear. She knew that every moment she spent searching for answers was a moment the virus continued to spread, claiming more lives. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that Ava stumbled upon a chilling revelation. The genetic sequence she had discovered bore a striking resemblance to a theoretical bioweapon design proposed by a rogue Andromean scientist decades earlier. The Andromedon hegemony had long been at odds with the United Terran Federation, viewing humanity's rapid expansion into the stars as a threat to their own dominance. Could this virus be the result of their machinations? A first strike in a war that no one had seen coming. Ava's mind raced with the implications of her discovery. If the Andromedans were behind this attack, then the virus was likely just the beginning. She needed to warn Captain Solarin and the rest of the crew, to prepare them for the possibility of a much larger conflict looming on the horizon. But as she rose from her workstation, a sudden commotion from the medical bay drew her attention. Screams of terror and pain echoed through the halls, accompanied by the sound of shattering glass and the unmistakable hiss of plasma fire. Ava raced toward the chaos, her heart pounding in her chest. As she burst into the medical bay, she froze, her eyes widening in horror at the scene before her. The infected colonists, once barely clinging to life, were now on their feet, their eyes blazing with an unholy red light. They moved with a speed and strength that defied their wasted bodies, tearing through the medical staff and the Nightingale's crew like a pack of ravenous beasts. And at the center of the carnage stood a figure that sent chills down Ava's spine, a tall, gaunt Andromedan, his pale blue skin etched with glowing cybernetic implants. In his hand, he held a pulsing orb of dark energy, a twisted grin spreading across his face as he surveyed the destruction he had wrought. "Behold," he proclaimed, his voice a metallic rasp that echoed through the blood-soaked room. "The dawn of a new era. An era in which the Andromedan hegemony will rise, and the plague of humanity will be cleansed from the stars." Ava stood frozen, her mind reeling with the realization that this was no mere outbreak, no accident of nature. This was an act of war, a calculated strike against the very heart of human civilization. And as the Andromedan's laughter filled the air, mingling with the screams of the dying and the roar of energy weapons, Ava knew that the battle for survival had only just begun. The Nightingale and her crew now faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, an enemy that would stop at nothing to see humanity's light extinguished from the galaxy. In that moment, as the walls of the medical bay shook with the force of the onslaught and the floor grew slick with blood, Ava made a silent vow. She would not let this enemy succeed. She would fight with every fiber of her being, draw upon every ounce of courage and resourcefulness she possessed to protect her patients, her crew, and her species. For in the face of annihilation, in the darkest hour of humanity's existence, Ava Rees knew that she would not fail. The future of all she held dear depended on it. As the battle raged around her, Ava sprang into action, her shock and horror transforming into a cold, steely resolve. She grabbed a fallen plasma rifle, the weapon feeling unfamiliar yet strangely comforting in her hands. With a cry of defiance, she charged into the fray, joining her crewmates in their desperate fight against the Andromedan invaders and their mind-controlled thralls. Plasma bolts filled the air, searing flesh and scorching metal as the two sides clashed in a brutal dance of death. Ava moved with a fluidity that surprised even herself, her instincts guiding her as she dodged and weaved, her rifle spitting bursts of white-hot energy at the enemy. Beside her, Dr. Xylox battled with a ferocity that belied his gentle nature, his Arcturian physiology granting him strength and speed beyond that of a human. Together, they formed a formidable team, pushing back against the relentless onslaught of the infected colonists. But even as they fought, Ava's mind raced, searching for a way to end this nightmare. She knew that the key to victory lay not just in the strength of their weapons, but in the power of knowledge itself. With a burst of inspiration, Ava turned to Dr. Xylox, shouting over the din of battle. "The virus. We need to find a way to disrupt its control over the infected." The Arcturian nodded, his golden eyes flashing with understanding. "The central nervous system. If we can find a way to sever the link between the virus and the brain, we might be able to free them from its influence." Ava's mind whirred with possibilities, recalling the research she had conducted on the virus's genetic structure. If they could synthesize a targeted neurotoxin, one that could selectively block the virus's neural pathways. But there was no time for prolonged experimentation, not with the battle raging around them and the Andromedan mastermind still loose. They needed a solution, and they needed it now. It was then that Ava's gaze fell upon the Andromedan himself, still standing amidst the chaos, his dark energy orb pulsing with malevolent power. In that instant, she knew what she had to do. With a cry of determination, Ava broke from the fray, racing towards the Andromedan with a speed born of desperation. The alien's eyes widened in surprise as she closed the distance, his hand raising to unleash a blast of dark energy. But Ava was faster. With a final Herculean effort, she lunged forward, her hand closing around the orb just as the Andromedan fired. The world around her exploded in a blaze of blinding light and searing pain, and then silence. Ava awoke to the gentle beeping of medical equipment, her body aching with a dull, persistent pain. Slowly, her eyes fluttered open, revealing the sterile white confines of the Nightingale's medical bay. "Welcome back," a familiar voice said softly. Ava turned her head to see Dr. Xylox standing beside her bed, his purple features etched with a mix of relief and concern. "You gave us quite a scare." What happened?" Ava croaked, her voice hoarse from disuse. Dr. Xylox smiled, his golden eyes shining with admiration. "You saved us, Ava. When you destroyed that orb, it severed the link between the virus and the infected. Without its control, the pathogen quickly burned itself out, leaving the colonists weak but alive." Ava's eyes widened as the memories came flooding back, the desperate battle, the Andromedan's sinister plot, the final, desperate gamble, and the Andromedan. "Gone," Dr. Xylox replied, his voice tinged with a hint of uncertainty. "Vaporized in the blast, as far as we can tell. But I have a feeling this isn't the last we've heard from the hegemony." Ava nodded, a grim determination settling over her features. "Then we'll be ready for them. We have to be." As she lay back against the pillows, her mind already racing with plans and preparations for the battles to come, Ava knew that this was only the beginning. The Andromedan hegemony had shown its hand, revealed the depths of its hatred for humanity and its willingness to use the most horrific weapons imaginable. But they had also underestimated the strength, the resilience, and the sheer indomitable will of the human spirit. And as long as brave men and women like the crew of the Nightingale stood ready to defend the innocent and fight for what was right, Ava knew that there was still hope. Hope for a future free from the shadow of war, a future in which the light of human compassion and ingenuity could shine brightly across the stars. And Ava Reeves would be there to ensure that future came to pass, no matter the cost. Shadows of the past. In the days following the Andromedan attack on Novaria Prime, Ava Reeves found herself haunted by questions and doubts. As the Nightingale resumed its journey through the stars, carrying the wounded and the weary, she couldn't shake the feeling that the true nature of the threat they faced remained hidden, lurking just beyond the reach of her understanding. Ava pored over the data they had collected during the battle, searching for any scrap of information that might shed light on the Andromedan's motives. The bioengineered virus, the dark energy orb, the cybernetic enhancements grafted onto the mastermind's flesh, all of it pointed to a level of technological sophistication and ruthlessness that chilled her to the core. But there was something else too, a nagging sense of familiarity, as though she had encountered this kind of horror before. Late one night cycle, as she sat hunched over her workstation, a memory surfaced from the depths of her mind. Years ago, when she was just a young nurse fresh out of training, Ava had been part of a medical relief mission to the war-torn planet of Zephyrus. The colony there had been caught in the crossfire of a brutal conflict between the United Terran Federation and a breakaway faction known as the Luminians. Ava could still remember the horror of that mission, the endless streams of casualties, the stench of blood and burnt flesh, the haunted looks in the eyes of the survivors. But there was one patient in particular who had left an indelible mark on her memory. He had been a soldier, a young man barely out of his teens, his body shattered by an explosion that had claimed the lives of his entire squad. Ava had sat with him through the long, painful nights, holding his hand and offering what comfort she could as he slipped in and out of consciousness. In his fevered ramblings, the soldier had spoken of a secret project, a weapon of unimaginable power that the Luminians had been developing in the shadows. Prometheus, he had called it, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and terror. They said it would change everything, that it would end the war forever. But I think it's going to destroy us all. Ava had dismissed the soldier's words as the delusions of a traumatized mind. But now, as she sat in the quiet of her quarters aboard the Nightingale, She couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to his ramblings. Could the Luminians' Prometheus project be connected to the Andromedans' bioweapon? Were they somehow part of the same dark tapestry of intrigue and destruction? Ava knew she needed answers, and there was only one place she could think to find them. With a newfound sense of purpose, she made her way to the Nightingale's command deck, where Captain Solarin stood hunched over a holographic map of the surrounding star systems. "Captain," Ava said, her voice quiet but firm, "I need to talk to you about something." Solarin turned, her slitted amber eyes narrowing as she took in Ava's expression. "What is it, Nurse Reeves? Have you found something in your analysis of the Andromedan virus?" Ava shook her head. "No, ma'am. Not exactly. But I think I might know where we can find some answers." She told Solarin about her experience on Zephyrus, about the wounded soldier and his whispered warnings of the Prometheus project. As she spoke, she could see the wheels turning in the captain's mind, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. "Zephyrus," Solarin murmured, her clawed fingers tapping thoughtfully against the edge of the holographic display. "That was nearly a decade ago. The Luminians were defeated, their leadership scattered to the winds. But there were always rumors that some of them had survived, gone to ground in the far reaches of the frontier." She turned to face Ava, her expression grim. "If the Luminians are involved in this, if they're working with the Andromedans, then this could be even worse than we thought." Ava nodded, a chill running down her spine at the implications. "We have to find out the truth, Captain. We can't let another Novaria Prime happen." Solarin was silent for a long moment, her eyes distant as though seeing something beyond the confines of the ship. Finally, she nodded. "You're right, Nurse Reeves. We need answers, and I think I know where to start looking." She brought up a new display on the holographic map, a shimmering web of data points and connecting lines. Intelligence reports have been tracking unusual activity in the Tartarus sector for months now, ships coming and going from an uncharted system, strange energy signatures, rumors of shadowy figures moving in the underworld. If the Luminians are hiding anywhere, it's there. Ava felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. The Tartarus sector was notorious for its lawlessness, a haven for pirates, smugglers, and worse. But if that was where the answers lay— "Set a course, Captain," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "Let's go hunting." As the Nightingale turned its prow toward the unknown, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were plunging headlong into a darkness deeper than any they had faced before, but she also knew that they had no choice. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and the crew of the Nightingale were the only ones who could tip the scales. In the shadows of the Med Bay, Ava clenched her fists, silently renewing her vow to uncover the truth and protect the innocent, no matter the cost. She had sworn an oath to heal and to serve, and she would not rest until the threat of the Andromedans and their dark allies was vanquished once and for all. As the ship hurtled through the void, the stars blurring into streaks of light, Ava couldn't help but feel a sense of destiny settling over her like a mantle. She had been called to this fight, chosen by fate or chance to stand against the gathering darkness. And stand she would, with all the strength and courage she could muster, until the light of hope shone once more across the galaxy. The journey to the Tartarus sector was fraught with peril. The Nightingale had to navigate through treacherous asteroid fields and dense nebulae, always on the lookout for signs of pirate activity or worse. Ava and the rest of the crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship running smoothly, tending to the wounded and the weary even as they prepared for the battles to come. As they drew closer to their destination, the sense of unease aboard the ship grew stronger. Strange whispers echoed through the corridors, tales of ancient evils and forgotten horrors that lurked in the shadows of the uncharted system. Some even spoke of a curse that lay upon the sector, a malevolent force that consumed all who dared to venture into its domain. But Ava refused to be swayed by superstition and fear. She knew that the only way to conquer the darkness was to face it head-on, to shine the light of truth into its very heart. And so she steeled herself for whatever lay ahead, drawing strength from the courage of her crewmates and the knowledge that they were fighting for a cause greater than any one of them. At last, the Nightingale emerged from the swirling nebulae and came upon the uncharted system. It was a desolate place, a graveyard of shattered worlds and dying stars. At its center lay a single planet, a dark and twisted thing that seemed to pulse with an unholy energy. As the ship drew closer, Ava's console lit up with a flurry of alerts. "Captain," she called out, her voice tight with alarm. "I'm picking up massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Solarin's eyes narrowed as she studied the readouts. "Those signatures, they match the patterns we detected in the Andromedan bioweapon. Whatever they're doing down there, it's connected to the attack on Novaria Prime." Ava felt a chill run through her as the implications sank in. The Andromedans and the Luminians, had they truly joined forces to create something so monstrous? And for what end? There was only one way to find out. With a grim determination, Solarin ordered the Nightingale into a low orbit around the planet. Ava and a team of Marines prepared to make planetfall, armed with the best equipment the ship could muster. As the dropship hurtled through the planet's turbulent atmosphere, Ava felt a sense of calm settle over her. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the chance to strike a blow against the darkness and uncover the truth that had eluded them for so long. The dropship touched down on the planet's surface, and the team emerged into a landscape of twisted metal and pulsing shadows. In the distance, a massive structure loomed, a dark and foreboding thing that seemed to throb with malevolent power. "There," Ava said, pointing towards the structure. "That's where we'll find our answers." As the team began to make their way across the blasted landscape, picking their way through the rubble and the wreckage, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Unseen eyes seemed to track their every move, malevolent intelligences that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. But there could be no turning back now. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and Ava knew that she and her comrades might be the only ones who could tip the scales. With a deep breath, she readied her weapon and stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The shadows of the past had led them here, to this moment of truth and reckoning. And Ava Reeves would not rest until the light of hope shone once more. The heart of darkness. As Ava Reeves and her team of Marines made their way across the blasted landscape of the dark planet, the sense of foreboding that had haunted them since their arrival only grew stronger. The twisted metal spires and pulsing shadows that surrounded them seemed to whisper of ancient horrors and unspeakable evils, dark secrets that had lain buried for eons. But Ava pushed forward, her resolve unwavering in the face of the mounting darkness. She knew that the answers they sought lay within the massive structure that loomed before them, a monolithic edifice of black stone and pulsing energy. Whatever the Andromedans and their Luminian allies were planning, it was here that the truth would be revealed. As they drew closer to the structure, Ava's keen eyes noticed something strange. Set into the base of the towering edifice were a series of intricate carvings depicting scenes of a long-forgotten history. Images of great battles and terrible sacrifices, of godlike beings wielding powers beyond comprehension. And at the center of it all, a symbol that sent a chill down Ava's spine. A stylized representation of a double helix, entwined with a staff and crowned with a star. The same symbol that had been etched into the Andromedan bioweapon that had ravaged Novaria Prime. "The mark of the Prometheus," Ava whispered, her voice tight with a mixture of awe and dread. "Just like the soldier on Zephyrus said, it's all connected." Sergeant Reese, the grizzled Marine who had been at Ava's side since the nightmare on Novaria Prime, stepped forward to examine the carvings more closely. "I've seen this symbol before," he said, his brow furrowed in concentration. "In the ruins on Zephyrus, after the Luminians were defeated. We always assumed it was just some kind of religious icon, but what if it's something more?" Ava nodded, her mind racing with the implications. The Prometheus project, the Andromedan bioweapon, the dark planet, all of it was part of a pattern, a tapestry of secrets and lies that stretched back further than any of them had ever realized. But there was no time to dwell on the past now. With a sense of grim determination, Ava and her team pressed forward, making their way into the heart of the dark structure. The air inside was thick and oppressive, filled with a sense of ancient malice that seemed to press down upon them from all sides. As they navigated the twisting corridors and cavernous chambers, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Unseen eyes seemed to track their every move, malevolent intelligences that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. And then, in a chamber that pulsed with an unholy red light, they found it. A massive machine, a construct of twisted metal and pulsing energy that seemed to throb with a life of its own. At its heart, suspended in a web of crackling force fields, was a pulsing orb of pure darkness. The Prometheus device, Ava breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and fascination. The source of the Andromedan bioweapon, the key to everything. As if in response to her words, the machine began to hum with an increased intensity, the orb at its center pulsing with a sickening rhythm. Ava's console lit up with a flurry of alerts, warning of an immense energy buildup within the device's core. "It's activating," she cried out, her fingers flying across the console as she tried to make sense of the readings. "We have to shut it down, now." But before they could act, a cold and malevolent voice echoed through the chamber, filled with a cruel amusement. "Foolish humans," it said, each word dripping with contempt. "You have no idea what you have stumbled into." Ava whirled around, her weapon at the ready, to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was an Andromedan, but unlike any she had ever seen before. Its body was a twisted fusion of organic and mechanical components, pulsing with the same unholy energy that emanated from the Prometheus device. The Prometheus project was just the beginning, the Andromedan said, its voice a metallic rasp. "A first step in our great work. The bioweapon that ravaged your pathetic colonies was merely a test, a proof of concept for the true power we have unlocked." It gestured to the pulsing orb at the heart of the machine, a look of rapturous exultation on its face. "Behold the seed of oblivion," it declared, its eyes blazing with a fanatical light. "The instrument of your species' destruction, and the key to our ascension." Ava felt a chill run through her as the implications of the Andromedan's words sank in. The bioweapon, the dark planet, the machine, all of it had been leading up to this moment, a final, cataclysmic unleashing of an ancient and terrible power. But she also knew that she could not let that happen. With a fierce and unwavering resolve, Ava raised her weapon and took aim at the Andromedan. "I won't let you destroy us," she said, her voice ringing with the strength and courage of the human spirit. "As long as I have breath in my body, I will fight you." The Andromedan laughed, a cold and scornful sound. "You cannot hope to stop us," it said. "The seed of oblivion is already awakening, and soon its power will be unleashed upon the galaxy. Your kind will be swept away, and a new order will be born." But Ava was not daunted. With a battle cry that echoed through the chamber, she opened fire, her team following suit. The chamber erupted into a maelstrom of energy beams and exploding machinery, as human and Andromedan fought with a desperate ferocity. At the heart of the chaos, the Prometheus device continued to build in power, the orb at its center pulsing with an ever-increasing intensity. Ava knew that she had to reach it, to find some way to shut it down before it was too late. With a final, desperate burst of speed, she lunged towards the device, even as the Andromedan unleashed a torrent of dark energy towards her. Ava felt the searing heat of the blast, felt it tearing at her flesh and burning through her armor. But she refused to yield. With a final, heroic effort, she plunged her hand into the web of energy surrounding the orb, her fingers closing around its pulsing surface. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced, a searing agony that threatened to consume her utterly. And yet, even in that moment of supreme sacrifice, Ava felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had done her duty, that she had given everything she had to protect her people and the galaxy they called home. As the Prometheus device exploded in a blinding flash of light, consuming the Andromedan and the dark planet in a maelstrom of energy, Averies smiled. Her last thoughts were of her crewmates, of the brave men and women who had fought beside her, and of the countless lives she had saved. In the end, it had all been worth it. Epilogue. In the weeks and months that followed the destruction of the dark planet and the defeat of the Andromedan conspiracy, the galaxy slowly began to heal. The remnants of the Prometheus project were hunted down and destroyed, and the Luminian remnants were brought to justice for their role in the creation of the bioweapon. But the scars left by the conflict ran deep, and the memory of Avery's sacrifice would never be forgotten. On Earth and countless other worlds, statues were raised in her honor, and her name became a byword for courage and selflessness in the face of overwhelming odds. And aboard the Nightingale, now under the command of Captain Reese, her legacy lived on. The ship and its crew continued their mission of healing and hope, carrying the light of human compassion to the farthest reaches of the stars. For though the darkness had been beaten back, they knew that it would never be truly vanquished. There would always be new threats to face, new evils to confront. But as long as there were those like Averies who were willing to stand against the night, the galaxy would never truly fall. The light of hope and unity would continue to shine, now and forever. Echoes of the past. In the years following Averies' heroic sacrifice and the defeat of the Andromedan conspiracy, the galaxy slowly began to heal. The United Terran Federation, now fully aware of the threats that lurked in the shadows, dedicated itself to rebuilding and strengthening its defenses, determined to never again be caught unprepared. But even as the wounds of the past began to fade, new dangers emerged to take their place. Rumors began to circulate of a powerful new faction rising in the Outer Rim, a coalition of rogue colonies and disenfranchised worlds united under a charismatic and ruthless leader. They called themselves the Novus Ordo, and their message was one of revolution and change. They spoke of the corruption and decadence of the Federation, of the need for a new order to rise from the ashes of the old, and at the heart of their movement lay a dark and terrifying secret, one that threatened to unravel the very fabric of galactic civilization. On the planet Zephyrus, now a thriving hub of commerce and industry, a young woman named Lena Varel made her way through the bustling streets of the capital city. Lena was a rising star in the field of xenobiology, renowned for her brilliant mind and her unorthodox approaches to research. But Lena had a secret, one that haunted her every waking moment. She was the daughter of Dr. Elias Varel, the mad genius behind the Prometheus project and the creator of the bioweapon that had nearly brought the galaxy to its knees. Lena had spent her entire life trying to atone for her father's sins, dedicating herself to finding cures for the most deadly diseases and ailments that plagued the galaxy. But now, as she delved deeper into her research, she began to uncover disturbing hints of a new threat emerging from the shadows of the past. It started with strange readings from the ruins of the Prometheus lab, where her father had conducted his twisted experiments. Energy signatures that matched no known technology, biological anomalies that defied explanation. And then came the dreams, vivid and terrifying visions of a darkness rising from the depths of the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. As Lena raced to unravel the secrets of her father's legacy, she found herself drawn into a web of conspiracy and intrigue that stretched across the stars. She discovered that the Novus Ordo was not just a political movement, but a cover for something far more sinister. A cult of fanatics who believed that the key to ultimate power lay hidden in the ruins of the Prometheus lab. Led by a mysterious figure known only as the Prophet, the cultists were determined to uncover the secrets of the Andromedan bioweapon and use them to reshape the galaxy in their own twisted image. And as Lena dug deeper, she discovered a terrifying truth, that the Prophet was none other than her own father, Elias Varel, returned from the grave to finish what he had started. Desperate to stop the cult's plans before it was too late, Lena turned to the only people she could trust, the crew of the Nightingale, now legendary heroes in their own right. Together, they set out on a dangerous mission to infiltrate the cult's stronghold and put an end to their madness once and for all. But as they battled their way through the cult's defenses, Lena and her allies discovered that the truth was even more horrifying than they had imagined. For the prophet had not just returned from the grave, he had been reborn, his consciousness uploaded into a monstrous new form that merged the power of the Andromedan bioweapon with the twisted genius of his own mind. In a final, desperate battle deep within the heart of the Prometheus lab, Lena confronted her father, the man she had once loved and admired, now a twisted mockery of everything he had once been. With tears streaming down her face, she pleaded with him to turn back from the brink, to abandon his mad dreams of conquest and destruction. But the prophet only laughed, his voice a distorted echo of the man he had once been. "You cannot stop the inevitable, my daughter," he said, his eyes blazing with a fanatical light. "The galaxy will be reborn in fire and blood, and from the ashes, a new order will rise." In that moment, Lena knew what she had to do. With a final, anguished cry, she unleashed the full power of her own biokinetic abilities, tearing apart the prophet's monstrous form from the inside out. As the lab collapsed around them, Lena and her allies barely managed to escape, watching in horror as the twisted remnants of the Prometheus project were consumed in a blaze of cleansing fire. In the aftermath of the battle, as the galaxy once again began to rebuild, Lena knew that her journey was far from over. The Novus Ordo had been defeated, but she knew that there would always be those who sought to exploit the power of the past for their own twisted ends. And so, with a heavy heart but an unshakable resolve, Lena took up the mantle of her father's legacy, determined to use her knowledge and skills to heal rather than destroy. She joined the crew of the Nightingale, dedicating herself to the ongoing mission of hope and unity that Ava Reeves had begun so many years before. For Lena knew, as Ava had known, that the fight against the darkness was a never-ending one. But as long as there were those who stood ready to defend the light, to fight for the ideals of compassion, justice, and unity, then there would always be hope for a better tomorrow. And as the Nightingale set forth once more into the vast expanse of the galaxy, Lena looked to the stars and smiled, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the strength and courage of those who had come before her, and the knowledge that, in the end, the light would always prevail.